keyboard shortcuts in Pro Tools are a very polarizing issue. That means some people really stand by them and other people wish that they were different. The real issue is that you can't customize them. That means you can't make new ones. You can't change them if you're used to doing things a certain way in a different piece of software. You're stuck with the Pro Tools way. I certainly am someone who has over the years wished I could customize them, but I had an experience not too long ago which really changed my mind about this. And that was that they're the same everywhere you go. What this means in practice is that when you are in a foreign country, for instance, and the software is in a different language, that if you have the key commands, then you're going to be able to use them even if you can't read what's on the screen. This happened with me in China. I was in a recording studio in Beijing, and I went in, and the engineer spoke zero English, and I had a session to do, and he was kind of apologizing and saying, I'm sorry, the Pro Tools here is in Chinese. I'm not going to be able to switch it. I mean, that's what I was gathering from essentially a game of charades. And I said, it's okay. Don't worry. And so I sat down, and I was able to run the entire session almost exclusively off of key commands. I didn't have to read Mandarin. I didn't have to do anything because I knew what I needed to do just based on the key commands themselves. I don't say this to brag or anything. And in fact, the engineer there in the studio was amazed because they don't use the key commands the same way in that particular studio. They hardly use them at all. But they understood after they saw me working in a session how powerful the key commands could be. The other benefit is that they haven't changed much over the years. Obviously, some things have come and gone, and there are things that as features get added, they have to be able to control. But basics. So, for instance, I could come into this project, and there are things that I could do without ever really having to think. Like, for instance, Command-Shift-N. I want to add some new tracks. I'm using the Command key with my arrows now to change which type that I'm adding. And I can even go up through some of these things. For instance, we could do dynamics, acoustic guitar, and it's going to bring that out with a plugin already on it as a preset. So adding new tracks is so easy without ever having to mouse around the screen. That's pretty cool. There are other things. For instance, if I'm pulling that across there, I can do more detailed fades here, changing all of that information. Command F. So that's pretty handy. There are some things that I really enjoy with Pro Tools key commands that I don't really think are in any other applications. For instance, if I want to zoom in on this, and we can do all kinds of zooming with that. But let's just say that we wanted to be able to get back to exactly where we are here. So I can hit enter on my keypad, and we could just do location 1 if we want to. But check this out. We have time properties. We can do a marker, a selection, or none. We can just do any of those. But we have general properties. So I can say zoom settings for this. And we want to actually do a selection because we want it to go back to that same place. And I think that's all we really need for now. So let's click, let's give it a name. So we're just going to do this as file, important file. Click OK. Now let's zoom out, go someplace else. And if I want to get back to that, I can do a very short key command on my keypad. And you saw how quick it was to get back there. So again, we're off doing something else. And I'm back. So how does this work? So let's look at the memory locations. This is that list right here. Now there's only one. I called it file. It tells me what is involved with that over on the right here. It is number 1. So on the keypad, if I type in period, type in the number of that memory location and hit period again, it takes me to it. So say I'm again zooming out, period 1 period, it brings me right back to that. Now, because the memory locations are so flexible in what they are. So again, let's do no time properties. And let's do track heights. Click OK. I could have given it a better name here. Let's do that real quick. So let's do track height. Now, if I'm over here, I'm doing extreme track heights, period to period, and it brings it all back down into there so easily. Again, let's do different window configuration. And actually, we should probably set this one as one right now. So let's do enter, none. Let's do window configuration. And we may actually have to save that. But let's do new configuration. Let's just say default for me. And we're going to do window layout, include edit mixed, targeted MIDI editor, score editor, and transport display settings. Or we could do it as an edit window, but we're just going to say default, click OK. And then let's do one more configuration. Let's call this one mix. We're going to click OK for a moment, but I'm actually going to come through here and now we're going to change this a little bit. Because even though it's mixed, I'm going to keep part of this as, there we go, just right up next to each other. Configuration, we're going to update mix to this. Okay, so now in here, window configuration default, we're going to call this default. Now, it's not just that we're doing this one thing, because I could also add all these other general properties. So it's not just recalling this, because we could, up here, you can see we have our list here. We can go between it using that, but let's add one more. And this time, we're going to say mix for that. And let's change that to mix right there. Okay, so this is now going to demonstrate another key command thing. And we can do 3 to get us here and 4 to get us back to there. But we could also have things selected and zoom things. Key commands in this case help us rule our whole universe with Pro Tools. And it makes it very useful and very easy to get around. When we go through editing, there's so many things we can use in editing. When we're recording, there's so many things we can use with recording. There's some things we can't even really get to any other way. So for instance, if I'm pushing play and I hold shift when I do the space bar, that does a half-time playback. And so we can actually change the playback speed of our whole project using a quick key command that we don't have any buttons for or anything else. So there's a few things which are just available via key command. So important. Okay, I hope that you can see, based on all of this example of our memory locations, ways that we can be so efficient and productive in Pro Tools. And there's a whole guide. If you go up here to your help, I would just print this out or put this on your phone and be reading through it all the time and learning the keyboard shortcuts, because there are so many of them. They're not going to be changing anytime soon, as they've shown, but they're something you just have to begin to use and memorize.